Glad to have you join us. This is Platform. I'm Ruth Aguele. As an entrepreneur, your goal is to make profit from sales. However, counting losses is not part of the bargain, even though it is inevitable when trying to build an empire. But being an entrepreneur is a risky venture. You win some, you lose some. Irrespective of that, the role of small business enterprise services as a catalyst for development, well, it is fundamental for economic growth of any nation. It plays a crucial role in generating employment, alleviating poverty, and contributing to the GDP across diverse sectors. They're usually characterized by their flexibility, innovation, and dynamism. According to reports, SMEs contribute about 48% thereabout of the nation's GDP and employ about 84% of the country's workforce. Now, this makes them a crucial driver of economic growth and job creation. Despite the contributions SMEs make, most entrepreneurs still face numerous challenges that hinders their growth and sustainability. And these challenges ranges from access to finance and infrastructure deficits to regulatory hurdles. Now, the federal government recognizes the crucial role SMEs play to the development of the nation, not leaving out the micro aspect also, and is working towards ensuring the growth of small and medium enterprises space in the country by putting the right modalities in place for businesses to thrive in an enabling environment. Well, as the federal government do its part to build a dynamic SME subsector so they can contribute to industrial growth and development, it is also important to get the perspective from the business holders, right? To understand what it is that they are dealing with and how they are surmounting their challenges. On Platform, our focus will be on SMEs' growth and sustainability. And our guest is Mr. Ifeanyi Christopher Oputa. He is the Director General, Nigerian Association of Small-Scale Industrialists. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Oputa.
Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. And just before we bring in our panelists, you know the tradition, we have to let you in more of who our guest is by reading out his profile. Mr. Ifeanyi Christopher Oputa is an advocate for small businesses across the country. His work with NASI, that's the Nigerian Association of Small-Scale Industrialists, has been pivotal in shifting government perspectives and fostering support for small businesses in Nigeria's volatile economic landscape. Trained as a chemical engineer, he is also a serial entrepreneur. He has explored diverse fields in entrepreneurial skills, ranging from catering, fashion, and gift packaging. He has worked with Chevron, Shell, and NNPC before becoming an entrepreneur. Throughout his career, Ifeanyi has been at the forefront of industrial procurement with a portfolio that spans textile, food and beverage, and manufacturing sectors. He consistently extends training to young entrepreneurs and employing thousands of young Nigerians for more than 4 decades. Well done. All right, our panelist is one of our own here. I'm talking about one of our business correspondent, Moplank Dakok. Moplank, thank you so much. Always nice to have you on Platform.
Yes, thank you, Ruth, for having me again.
You're welcome.
Platform.
All right, so Mr. Oputa,
Yes,
let's paint a picture, for the SMEs landscape in Nigeria, looking at the space. If you want to look at the growth and, let me say trajectory, what would be your, opening remarks as regards how SMEs are thriving in a country like Nigeria, looking at the population, the demand, and of course, meeting these demands?
Okay. First of all, I'll say that MSMEs are not given their full recognition, and it's not really anyone's fault because there's no proper understanding of what the MSMEs are doing in the country. The MSMEs hold the jugular of Nigeria's economy. The statistics that we read and we reel out, as you know, they don't quite capture the
exact numbers.
Not even exact. They don't capture a fraction of what MSMEs are doing in our economy. And this creates a mismatch between, if you don't know someone is that important in your home, you might give the person less credit for the great things he or she is doing. So our tireless work is to make sure people at the helm of affairs understand the contributions of the MSMEs to Nigeria's economy, and that's been going on for decades. It's not a new scenario. Yes.
Okay, Moplang, I see you want to come in, so go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to say that, for various years, successive governments have tried to, solve the issues of MSMEs. They've tried to grapple with their issues, but MSMEs still cry out for help. What exactly is the issue? What are the issues that, MSMEs are grappling with, and why haven't governments been able to solve these issues?
Okay, that's a very good question. Over time, like I said earlier, government of the day hasn't understood the role MSMEs are playing, and therefore not given MSMEs the support that would help those MSMEs do great in the economy. It's like what we call in NACI understanding the parallel economy. Because in every country, you have two economies. You have that economy which everyone sees, that is traceable, that is tracked. That's the main economy. In most countries of the world, the economy that's not seen, the parallel economy, is normally the underworld economy of criminal activity, economy of child trafficking. That whole underworld economy is what is hidden and what no one wants to report. But in Nigeria, what we call it the parallel economy is that this hidden economy is not an economy of crime. The real economy of Nigeria that's not being seen it's an economy of honest, hardworking people, but who are not being seen. Quick example.
Okay.
We all know, anybody who is being honest with himself in the economic space knows that Nigeria is the breadbasket for the entire West Africa. So Nigeria is feeding West Africa. So the food that's being bought and sold in Nigerian markets, the competition at the farm gate is not between Nigerian farmers and Nigerian buyers in Bauchi and Lagos. It's between people in Cameroon, people in Niger, Chad, the entire Sahel. They're buying our food. So, but that food that's going out of the country, it's being smuggled out. It's not being transparently exported. So someone somewhere in the government will say Nigeria's main export is crude oil. When for decades, even before Nigeria started discovering oil, Nigeria has been exporting food. We look at the export statistics, they say Nigeria's food exports it's a fraction of what it really is. So,
in essence, you're saying we don't have enough statistics about
we don't have
our exports.
Any authentic statistics about our export, because it's being hidden, and because it's being hidden, it's the power of that economy is not being supported. Because in the thinking of on the papers which the development partners use to work, the World Bank, the IMF, everybody who takes a decision, even at federal government level, CBN, etc., the decisions taken are taken based on data they get. But if this data is faulty, they take faulty decisions and continue wondering why the policies are not working.
Okay, so let me come in here.
Yes.
Government, of course,
Yes.
will do its part
Yes.
to ensure an enabling environment
Yes.
for businesses, the MSMEs, to thrive.
Yes.
But let's delve into the issues from the entrepreneurs now
Yes.
themselves.
Yes.
Like, she asked a question on the challenges. What
Yes.
is it exactly they're dealing with? Because
Yes.
I know just recently,
Yes.
the Vice President, Kashim Shettima, met with some stakeholders and working towards, ensuring that the CBN,
Yes.
look at ways to bridge those funding gaps for
Yes.
MSMEs
Yes.
across the country.
Yes.
So that's on one hand.
Yes.
Now, we're trying to get what these entrepreneurs, whether micro, small scale, medium enterprises, what are they really dealing with, their challenges?
Okay.
Because it's your business.
Yes.
If you want it to grow, it's beyond what governments will create that enabling environment,
Yes.
but it is your business.
Yes.
So let's delve into their world.
Okay.
All right.
Let me give you an example. The biggest challenge that any MSME, and in fact any business person, authentically faces in Nigeria is that most Nigerian businesses or business people do not understand the cost of money. Okay? Now, all the economic, all the books and the MBAs and all the people who you see calling themselves economists and saying they're professors of economists especially, have standard global indices they use to project how an economy should fare. Now, when you bring it down to Nigeria and you say, okay, look, the official cost of money, if you go online, check, you see the CBN rate plus 14% plus 2, that's what they say is the official cost of money. But what is the real cost of money in the economy? Now, if the cost of money in Europe is 2%, if it's 0% in Japan, if it's 4% in America, the cost of money, what it means is, what does it cost? The average person who needs to get access to money, what will it cost that person to achieve that? A business person who has a bankable idea. In Nigeria, the cost of money for the little guy who has a bankable idea today is 10% per month. That's 120% per annum. That's the cost of money in Nigeria. For a person who hasn't got a connection, who hasn't got a big man or big woman or someone behind it, the person on the street, the lady who has a small place in the market, she wants to expand her business. She's going to borrow money. She's going to go to a loan shark, either an online loan shark, which has a fancy name, but they're online loan sharks, or she'll go to a traditional loan shark and drop her car, family car, with the loan shark to borrow money at 10% per month, minimum, to help her business, to pay her children's school fees, to get power to her. That's the cost of money to that person. Now, if the cost of money is 10% per month, 120% per year, they look at inventory. If your inventory is money, so if the cost of money is 10% per month, and you put up a profit margin as an illiterate business owner, right? Someone who hasn't gotten the understanding of what's going on in the economy, you put up a 30% markup on products you buy to sell. If you don't sell them for 3 months, by the Nigerian economy, the real, not the CBN economy, the Nigerian economy, that 10% per month cost of money, you're not making profit. You're at a loss at 3 months. So even the big players, the banks, the huge industrial players, if they're borrowing money at 30% per annum, already they cannot hold inventory properly. The international people we're fighting against, the other African countries, they can hold inventory at 5%, at 10%. So that means they manufacture goods and they keep those goods in stock. They're not unsold goods. The cost of keeping unsold goods to those countries is a fraction of what it costs a manufacturer, either medium, small, or any size in Nigeria. So when you have that kind of cost of money and a non-understanding of the cost of money, then there's a problem. So just to move that a bit forward, then you talk about those who even have access to this money. You go to borrow money, you look for money to add to whatever you have. And if you're lucky to have those people who can put in a word for you, before now, you'd have to borrow at the bank rate, which is 30% or something. Now, at independence, almost everything you see in our country was essentially imported from the UK. The police framework, the customs framework, the banking framework, it's not home developed, it's imported. So that imported framework for banking says people must have collateral. And collateral is acceptable to the banks are landed properties, COVs of landed properties as against movable assets. Now, why do we borrow that from Europe? Internationally, everybody, if you're a cleaner, a sweeper, you're a housekeeper, no matter how low you are in this strata of society, you have access to a mortgage where you pay 3% of the cost of the building and you start paying, and that equity in that mortgage is now looked at as collateral. So everybody has access to borrowing because everyone has collateral. Everybody who works has collateral, landed property. But you bring it to Nigeria and you say, you must have collateral, and no one has a house. How many people in this room own a home? if it's not inherited.
So if you want to push it to the entrepreneurs now, what exactly are they dealing with? I know you're trying to paint a picture for the system and the structure.
Not the system, for the entrepreneur, because the entrepreneur is in the system. The entrepreneur wants to borrow money. He's told that he must bring collateral. He doesn't have the collateral. What does he do? He looks for who has the collateral, borrows collateral from someone, pays that person 20% for the collateral, pays the bank 30%. You have an economy where people are borrowing at 50% to run their businesses officially and 120% outside the official system. While next door to us, they're borrowing at 9% officially. In all parts of Africa and across the world, in China and places, at 0%. So already our the cost of money is horrendous. That's one side. Then the infrastructure. Everyone in Nigeria talks about infrastructure. All of the infrastructure that the MSME puts in place to run its business costs the fuel costs for running generators, the water that they have to produce and treat. These are what normally should be municipal provisions, but MSMEs have to provide those costs. Those not only MSMEs. Now, in the case of larger firms, as they provide those costs, for those costs, they made an argument to government that, look, we're providing all this infrastructure. In exchange for this provision, maybe give us some tax reliefs. Give us some incentives that's okay. Because you're providing all these things yourself, you have these incentives. But what happens to the little guy? Secondly, if the big guy, the big company, borrows money and has an issue, has a problem in paying that money, the government created for the big guys, AMCON. It says this for everybody, but AMCON essentially has helped banks protect those large players who could not meet their. Now, what happens to the small guy? The small woman in Kefi that borrows money, that can't pay. She's going to be arrested by the police. The guy in the market who cannot pay his loans and he's going to be arrested and criminalized in our society.
Mr. Oputa,
yes, please.
If I understand you correctly, even if you're trying to throw it back to how the system operates, the entrepreneurs have their own share. Because if you're talking finance and capital, the capital base of some entrepreneurs, they lack structure based on research. Now, you're collecting credit to expand your business or put into your business or even start a business. What kind of structure have you created for yourself? What kind of planning have you done for yourself? Is the association also teaching or rather enlightening these entrepreneurs that it's not just about delving into a business, it's about planning, it's about building a structure. So do your own part and let's see where it goes.
Perfect question. Perfect. Now, it's easy to sit down, not just, this argument is not something just from you, it's from so many different, even banks say, we couldn't lend to these folks because they don't have structures. We couldn't lend to them because they're not organized. They're not this, they're not that. On our side, we are constantly educating and upgrading the skill set and the knowledge base of our members. But remember, like I've said, these folks are not your normal everyday folks. These folks are desperate. These people we're talking about are having local government folks coming with trucks and sealing off their shops. These people are having double-digit inflation totally obliterate their profits and their business. These are people these are the lowest of the low. The people who are suffering horrendous situations in our country, and like I said, they're providing their own infrastructure. When you're providing when a state, the Nigerian state, I'm not talking about today. This is from military regime where the problem really started, and it's been borrowed and carried over for decades. If you're not taking care of those things that make the small business player, give him that room to thrive, you're having people who are at their wits' end and struggling every single day just to make that day pass. So when you say they don't have structure, other countries where this problem happened, it was happening in Bangladesh, it was happening in Singapore, it was happening everywhere in the world, what different thing was done? The different thing that was done is that they created development finance institutions. So when you create a development finance, it says, okay, look, you know what? We know these people haven't got the capacity. We know that they cannot pay back loans the way average people do, because they are facing a myriad of challenges. So the DFI will bring in funding and say, look, as we bring this funding in, we know we're not going to recover at this pace or this rate, but we're also going to build capacity. We're going to support the building of capacity, because that capacity building, which creates the structure, etc., is it's something you just have to do. You look at where is the money going to? Where's the money train? Then you look at Nigeria. A second thing you look at quickly. Traditionally, Nigerians all believe that the women are the most disenfranchised people in the business communities.
Oh, well.
All right? You and I, everyone says that. I know the Nigerian women out there are going to shoot me tonight.
We have two women,
shoot me tonight. But let me tell you something.
Yes.
Nigerian women control the Nigerian economy. Forget about anything you hear. Nigerian women have always controlled the Nigerian economy.
Okay.
It's only Nigeria that you hear about. Have you ever heard someone abroad saying market woman? No one talks of market women in Europe. It's here that you have market women. Our markets are dominated and controlled by women. Fishing that you hear about fishermen, most fishing is done by women. Farming, you hear of farmers. Most farming is done by women. Enterprise, fashion, creative industry, check it out. Women are controlling the economy. My mother had 5 small businesses that she was using to support the home. But all the credit goes to the man. But the women are the ones running the show. In many homes today, and I'm talking about, no one has done statistics because no one wants to come out and say it, but I'm sure 60 to 70% of Nigerian homes are being financially supported, not just supported, financially run by the women.
Mr. Oputa.
Yes, please.
You kept talking about financing,
yes.
But Ruth talked about having structure and also skills.
Yes.
You haven't spoken much about skills, but I want to ask you,
yes.
Do you think financing is more important than having skills, or having the skills for the business is more important than having the finance? Which one comes first? Which one should come first?
Okay. A lot of people make a bit of a mistake in terms of what they believe an entrepreneur or a business owner has to do. A lot of people believe that a business owner, for example, a person who has a bakery must be a caterer or a chef or something. Yes. A person who has a barbering salon or something must be a barber. It doesn't always fall that way. You have investors in the economy, and you have those people who are supposed to be employed in the economy, and those employees in the economy are the ones who need a skill set improved. We are in the middle of programs with foreign partners and local partners to develop and improve the skill set of MSMEs. The skill set of MSMEs in Nigeria, sad to say, is on a much lower level today than of our West African counterparts. Okay, so that's why you hear, I'm a patriotic Nigerian, but I'm being honest to you about what the situation is. 10 Nigerian builders who are building homes would rather take a Togolese or a Sierra Leonean or anybody from West Africa to come and do their tiling and their finishing than take a Nigerian. So the same thing goes with tailors. You guys know, everyone knows, they say Senegal tailors. Exactly.
Yeah.
So the skill set issue is there, but it's made more difficult when people are, once you tackle the base, which is what makes people desperate, then they now are able to get more interested even in improving their craft, this skill set. But when they're desperate, the desperation level where the businesses are on the verge of collapse, that makes a lot of people less interested in improving that quality, but going more into how do they survive tomorrow? How do they get that business to run tomorrow? That's That's what. So, in any economy where people are desperate and looking for how to survive tomorrow, many things suffer, including quality.
All right.
Yes.
So, now that you've agreed that there's a skills gap.
Of course.
What is your association doing particularly about it to handle that in Nigeria?
Very well. We are in partnership with, I wouldn't probably have to name the association because but many associations where, especially in textiles, we're doing that. We have a whole conversation around that. With the mechanics groups, we're also talking about, we're also working with them. But these international groups are bringing in presently a whole range of trainers who are going to be working through a few of the, I think it's the MBTI and the National Board of Technical Education. Yes, we're working with those groups. Now, because we know that once that's done, essentially these are two, they have to work pari passu. You remove desperation and then you get interest. Some of these foreign folks are even doing as much as providing food and transport to get people trained, because they know the first question is, how can I go for a training when how do I eat? Exactly. So those primary issues are critical to resolve whilst improving training, because nationwide, those who are the so-called training apprentices, many of those people themselves are apprentices. So you might have, if you look at air conditioning across Nigeria, ask anyone who has an air conditioner, you can't find someone who knows what he's doing, that will keep it working properly. Generators, the same problem. Millions of generators across the country, but people who are properly trained to. So in every sphere of endeavor, you find that there's a skill set gap.
Okay, but are these entrepreneurs willing to equip themselves? Because at the end of the day, it's for your own benefit.
Yes.
So are they showing interest?
Now, this is where it gets tricky. Like I've said, in the scheme of things, the Nigerian population, has voted with their checkbooks, with their money, against inferior products. Okay? So, and inferior products, you vote with their money. Inferior service, what can you do? When the inferior service comes to you and it's universal across the country, will you take your car to Cotonou to get it fixed? You can't. Will you take? So the Nigerian public, in terms of services, has sadly had to accept what is available because it's across board. So solving the skill set issues across board, it's not isolated to some areas. So most, like I said, those who are the trainers themselves, those who are having apprentices around them, go to a place where you see someone with 5 apprentices. It's like someone who's teaching English and the person is speaking broken English. So exactly what are you teaching? And that just explains the situation. So, but if, as we're exploring this with the government of the day, with government as headlong, we're saying, hey, if you really want to make MSMEs thrive, if that's our joint goal, then a lot more attention has to be given, even more than that which is given to the large players, because this is where the real economy is functioning. That's why the CBN always, go back to 2009, the CBN said itself, they said, look, they don't know how Nigeria escaped recession when the whole world was having a recession, because according to the dynamics and interest, Nigeria should have been in recession in 2008-9. But they saw the economy still flourishing because they didn't quite understand the impact of the MSMEs in the economy.
All right. Just hold that thought. Yes. We have to take a break. We'll be back shortly. Please stay tuned.
What are we doing as a nation to, first of all, settle our teeming populace, especially the
NTA's political package with a third eye on the nation's political scene? I am Fisa Ogunfuyi. Welcome.
You have to be very careful giving space to people who are obviously sponsored to further the agenda of some other groups.
There's a lot of questions. A lot of questions in a closed door sessions. Some of these issues, some of the problems bedeviling of their.
In fact, between June 1st and July 17, 19-point-something billion has left the coffers of the NDDC.
I can say my constituency, they need everything because we don't have anything.
A method for digital literacy is a bot that you can use, you can interact to learn more about digital literacy.
Hello, it's our pleasure to have you join us on platform. I'm Ruth Aguwele.
What is the yardstick for measuring everybody's moral integrity? It's critical at this point in time.
How daunting has that been for the Institute in getting them abreast with all the legislative procedures?
The fact remains that one training workshop is not enough.
Good to have you there. The conversation is on SMEs, growth and sustainability, and we have Mr. Ifeanyi Oputa. He's the DG of the Nigerian Small-Scale Association of Small-Scale Industrialists. So, Moplang, you were going to ask the question.
Yes, I wanted to take us back briefly to the issue of financing, because I see you're particularly passionate about financing. So the federal government has, introduced several interventions, including 200 billion naira for MSMEs. I want to know, your members, have they been able to access this funding? And if not, what are the bottlenecks to this access?
Okay, so to go on that, the MSMEs, the 200 billion naira now is not for MSMEs only. The recent 200 billion naira from the federal government, 75 billion for MSMEs, 50 billion was for grants, conditional grants to folks, and then 75 billion was for manufacturers, large scale or larger people.
Sorry to cut you. Manufacturers are not part of your association?
No, we have a lot of manufacturers in our association, but they're not the large players.
Oh, okay.
When you talk of breweries and that, those are large players.
Okay.
So there's 75 billion set aside for the large players in manufacturing, 75 billion for MSMEs, 50 billion for folks who are doing for conditional grants.
Yes.
As you can imagine, the amount of people who have come forward, in the first instance, we had a pullback. A lot of people are saying, is this for real? Is it real? Is it going to happen? And so we had the first set of engagement along with BOI to make sure the MSMEs understood that, yes, it's for real. This is happening. The interest rate is lower than ever, talking of 9%. When I've told you just before now that MSMEs are used to getting money at 120%. Despite whatever governments or people say, MSMEs in the real space will tell you that they're borrowing at 120%. So at 9% is like a dream come true. BOI has been doing their homework, and it's even though the funds are provided through BOI is held accountable for those funds. So there's not like
that's why people must pay back.
Yeah, of course, not only pay back, but even you want to make sure you're not giving the money to people who are the wrong people.
Yes, yeah.
And so a lot of people, including our members, including members of all associations, needed to have a few of their to put their houses in order. Because a person who's borrowing at 120%, when you're borrowing at that rate, you're not told to bring anything besides your car or this. So in this scenario where you're now told, hey, you must have a physical address, you must have your NIA, all these things intact. So it's spurred a lot of activity amongst people who need to now get their CAC intact, and that's a good thing, because then it's helping government to then see, oh, you know what? There are a lot of these people out there who we never saw on the radar. So as long as they're not on the radar, then you can make plans for them. And that may explain why successive plans have not recognized those that are not on the radar. And today, through the BOI, at least, I can't say the exact number, but tens of thousands of people who were not on the radar are now on the radar. And that means, so that process of getting them on the radar is what BOI has been doing. With our support and the support of others in the organized private sector of Nigeria, we've been getting people on the radar. And with that in place, where its disbursement is imminent. We've gotten that assurance, and I'm quite confident of what I've heard and what I've seen, that BOI is doing what it has to do to make disbursement imminent now.
So if what I'm getting from you correctly is that there's synergy from the federal government part.
Yes.
But what about at the state level? Because I want to believe you have members across the country.
Yes.
So what's the synergy? What are you getting from the state government?
Okay, we have, most state governments have a similar view to what the federal government has had in terms of not being able to quite understand the dynamics and challenges. Some states have gone deeper. For example, we have a NACI, some 2 or 3 governors who are NACI members, who have been in the forefront of NACI. So in those states in particular, there is active engagement. In states like Jigawa State, in Katsina, you have active engagement because these folks understand the MSME gamut. And a lot of other governors are taking the lead. And look at Lagos, for example, with the LSETF going on for the past decade, supporting MSMEs. So we have a lot of state-level support in their individual states. But the sheer volume, the sheer size of the constituency, it is beyond what most people could understand. The demands and the needs of these people are sky high. And so beautifully SME space started getting attention, real attention, in 2015. Beautifully attention. I mean, verbal attention since 1960, but real attention accidentally since 2015. Why is it accidentally? Because something happened which created this whole thing we're looking at. The government of the day decided that, hey, the Treasury single account, that TSA, that all government money should leave the banking system and go to the government itself. So when that happened, the banks of Nigeria, who traditionally had not given a damn about MSMEs, all this, whatever anyone says is different, but the banks of Nigeria had not been the support group for MSMEs. But when this happened in 2015, all the big banks started looking for those MSMEs now and started lowering their entry rates, started creating desks that would deal with MSMEs, started looking for ways, scrambling to support MSMEs, because they now found that the bulk money which they were trading with
there's a
vanished.
gap, so they needed it.
Yeah. So from 2015, with this gap, with the banking system, with everyone now saying, hey, you know what, we need to really, these are the folks who will keep us in business. But they have an additional challenge in that the fintechs came in. And some of the fintechs, the large fintechs who are playing around, have swallowed up the MSME banking, and because they're offering collateral-free credit, these fintechs. So the banks are still, the traditional banks are still finding their feet in that space. But the fintechs have gone with algorithms, with AI, they're able to predict and lend in 2 days, in 1 day, automatically to the MSME space. So that's a big, and these banks are having MSMEs open accounts. Almost ask your driver, ask your cook, ask everybody for a bank account. If not, the ones I've dealt with, people I've dealt with who are small income groups people, 80% give me their account numbers as a fintech.
Phone numbers.
Phone numbers,
Yeah,
fintech
phone numbers,
account numbers, not traditional banks. So I don't know if banks have understood the game, that there's a real shift going on here because of 2015, the year that the Nigerian MSME came to the front.
But MSMEs, are they not afraid of taking these loans? Because we know stories of these fintech guys, we call them loan sharks.
Yes.
When they come at you for being unable to pay back.
Yes.
You know.
Yes. It scared a lot of people. A lot of MSMEs have been scared, especially women, funny enough, scared of taking loans. But there's a point in time. It's like you're a mother. I mean, women are mothers, right?
Yeah.
Imagine, because to a business owner, the business is like a child. It's like the person's child, physical child. That's how a business is to the owner.
You have to nurture it.
Yes.
Exactly. Now, if as a mother, your child is in a coma, right? Your child's in a coma, and you're told that it will take 400K for that child to be rescued, you will borrow.
Of course.
Aha. So the business owner,
Sure.
when the child is, and business owners' children, most business owners right now, their children are in coma. I mean, they're the businesses.
So they have no option.
They have no option. This is survival.
Yeah.
This business is feeding their families. See, we don't have, like, in some countries you have NHS, you have these things where the bulk majority of people are getting medical care through the state, for example, in some countries. Now, in Nigeria, most families, especially the ones who are off the radar before, they don't have access to health care outside of what they can pay for. And since they can't afford to pay for this health care, people are going to traditional to go and pray for healing. And
we have the NHIA scheme.
Yes, these are great things. But when you look at the gamut of people, 220 million people, it's going to take some time before these schemes can trickle down to. So the MSME space, the typical MSME owner, isn't an employee of a company that has an HMO, for example. Do you understand? So companies that have HMOs and all that, they take care of their staff through the NHIS scheme. But the guy in Kafanchan, the ginger farmer there, the person doing tomatoes and beans in another place, the tailor in the middle of Wuse Market.
You know, this brings me to return
Yes.
on investment.
Yes.
If you, I know in the aspect of innovation or diversification,
Yes.
we get to see entrepreneurs
Yes.
want to expand their businesses,
Yes.
which is good.
Yes.
But are you seeing a network of people who want to return back, more like invest in that business, so your child, so to say, your
Yes.
baby business does not fall into coma?
Like investing their money back in the business?
Yes.
That's what every MSME does. MSMEs don't have to be told. Besides
Some
taking-
have to be told.
Well,
Some who are just starting.
Yes. Okay, new ones, yeah?
Yeah.
But most MSMEs, because, now let me hit somewhere else. In the MSME space in Nigeria, maybe 40% are doing their MSME business as a side hustle. So most people who are so-called working, who are in jobs,
They don't see the bigger picture.
but they're also, most of the people in jobs, teachers, everybody has a small business. That side hustle is what feeds the salary doesn't feed the family. So
I know Moplang has a side hustle.
Of
but we have to recognize
But
that.
for
yes.
a civil servant like
Yes.
me, it has been limited to agriculture.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
you know.
But most, even a person working as a receptionist somewhere, she also is if you go online, you see all the hairstylists, this. Nigerians, we have a resilient multitude of people who are working and receiving a salary which they know won't go home. So has anyone asked, how do they survive? How are they looking okay? Because almost everyone has a side hustle, especially the women folk.
Yeah.
So the men are the ones in danger in this our country. And when men are I'm telling you, the men are in danger. Whenever men are in danger, specific policies have to not just focus on the women folk. We have to say, hey, how do we rescue the men folk through business? Because you can't just call them and give them salaries. No, that will help. You can't say you're giving grants to everybody. No, we can't afford that as a country. You have to make sure that men have access to business and are doing business, if it's whatever it is. Because without that, if the men are disenfranchised, security goes. Okay, security goes because the men, idle men, are a threat to peace.
Of course.
Idle women can beg friends and family, but idle men are a threat. They get involved in things. All the criminality we have in Nigeria, if you look at it, 90% is not ideological criminality. So whoever says that it's religion, it's not religion. It's economic criminality. So they're doing it for money, right? And as long as in society we're saying men who are broke are this, are bad, are this, you have more and more men looking for money anyhow they can get it. But if people are engaged in business, in activity, in getting things done, if we can support and get more people into business, into activities that are economically beneficial to them, crime rate will drop. It's not looking for just to drop crime rate by killing. The more you kill criminals, the more criminals will erupt if you don't tackle the main game, which is the economic issues that men are facing. Men are the problem. Men are facing the problems right now. Men are the easy targets, the willing tools for criminality, as long as they're starving. Okay. Right.
So women, you can hear from a man's perspective. Men are dealing with a lot.
Yes, a whole lot.
Do we still have time for?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, another question. So I want to ask you, despite all these challenges we've talked about,
yes,
the issues of finance,
yes,
skills,
yes,
use of technology, and the rest of them.
Yes.
Do you still see a bright future for the MSMEs? What is your outlook for Nigeria's MSME space?
Two things. First of all, the most beautiful thing is that there is 100% bright outlook for the Nigerian economy. That's the main thing we've seen. Okay, if I can quickly break it down in a sec. The 4 or 5 major headers that swallow our foreign exchange in Nigeria, the 4 or 5 things that suck at the foreign exchange. Number one has been the buying of importing petroleum products. Number 2 has been large foreign operators who need to repatriate their money. The NTAs, all these people, the kind of money they need to repatriate is in the billions of dollars every year. You have the local needs for local manufacturers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you have the people who buy money for the school, et cetera. Now, in these 4 major headers, one has gone. That's the petroleum, cost of bringing crude petroleum products. With that going, you have half of the burden resolved. That's what's happening this year. Half of the burden is resolved. You're seeing it already in the way the demand for forex has dropped. That is a great thing for the economy. So as this happens, then people now, as we're producing, we have more and more raw materials available, more and more people, associations like ours, and others who are working together to see that MSMEs come in and take advantage of the opportunities available, the raw materials available, processing them. African Free Continental Zone, etc., is happening. There's demand, there's competition coming in.
Okay.
So everyone is getting, this is a defining year for MSMEs.
I like the optimism.
Yes, this is the year. This is the year.
Okay, so Mr. Oputa,
yes,
we're rounding off, but I want you're a serial entrepreneur,
yes,
and by the grace of God, you've done well for yourself. There are a lot of startups out there.
Yes.
Did you just say a prayer?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
Thank
so
you,
there are a lot of startups out there,
yes,
who are trying to just, sustain their business.
Yes.
But again, they're grappling with a lot.
Yes.
So what are some of the mistakes you've already identified some,
yes,
but what would you advise them as we round off?
What I advise for MSMEs who've started, especially in the past 2 years, is to stay in the game. Okay? It's going to be, it's a rough time, but there is light at the end of this tunnel, especially now with the, like I mentioned before, with the active refining of petroleum products in Nigeria. There's hope on the horizon. Stay in the game. Look at the sector you're in. Those who need to know, jump in right now to any sector which deals with processing of agriculture, with textiles, with the creative arts. Jump in now while it's still hot. This is the time. Yes.
I like that. Jump in now. Thank you so much, Mr. Ifeanyi Christopher Oputa. Thank you for your thought.
Thank you,
and please keep leading these entrepreneurs in the right direction.
Absolutely.
And keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you more.
He's the Director General, Nigerian Association of Small-Scale Industrialists. Moplang Nakog, our business correspondent, a businesswoman in the making.
Yes, sir.
Of course.
Thank you for your time on platform.
Thank you for having me.
All right, you've heard it from Mr. Oputa. Keep doing what you have to do, one block at a time. I'm talking to MSMEs now, people into that field. You just keep, doing what you know how to do best and never give up. That consistency, that determination, that zeal to thrive will get you to the top. And that's Platform. I'm Ruth Aguwele. Bye.